Good morning. It is Sunday, August 9th, 2026. About, let's see, just after 10 a.m. I am outside right now and spent the morning doing stuff inside and hanging out with Kimmy and talked to my son, the shepherd, who's up in Colorado right now. He's doing well. For our chore this morning, we're just going to be doing a harvest. At this time of year, you have to walk through the gardens completely, and things like cucumbers and squash, and there's a lot of produce that comes on fast. And if you miss your harvest window, then they're not very tasty. So we need to start doing this every other day or so to keep up with the world. We're going to start in the greenhouse and just start checking how everything is doing. And so I'm looking. The onions I spoke about last week, they are all up. They're about 2 inches tall, so they are in good position. In fact, the books recommend that if you're not ready to plant them, you keep trimming them down, but we're not there yet. So they'll keep going. The basil looks really good. It's ready for another haircut. And the cabbage that we planted last week is all up. It looks like the cauliflower mostly is. The broccoli is. The kale is. Oh, I got one little guy there who's not getting enough water. Where's my water line? There it is. So most of the stuff that I planted last week is now actually started. It's got its little head out. Okay, so we're just doing a quick watering here. There's nothing that immediately. Well, I can cut the herbs. I could do that right now, but they will start to wilt like right away. So we want to keep that. Want to keep it on the plant as long as we can. All right, now I'm going into the first garden here. I said before we have 2 gardens. We call them the summer garden and the winter garden because so far, basically, the winter garden is the one where we plant stuff over the fall and in the winter. And the summer garden, we haven't. So I'm looking. I have a bunch of cherry tomatoes that are ready to come online. All right. We have peppers, lots of peppers. Now, when you first start gardening, you oftentimes want to leave things on the plant to let them get as big as possible. Because when you shop at the grocery store, the pepper you want is the biggest, juiciest one. But the reality is, by picking things a little bit younger, you can keep the plant growing longer. Now, I have 2 tools here. I have a little pair of trimming scissors, which makes this handy. You don't want to damage the plant. So these are some peppers. These are all, it says red Italian. I should probably let them grow a little bit longer. But anyway, like I'm saying, you can trim the plants, the peppers off the plants, and keep the plants producing longer because they'll position that energy into growing fruit. So this one I'm looking at right now is heavily laden with, it looks like a bell pepper. So I'm going to take two of them off and let the others keep growing. I'm also looking for any signs of weirdness, something suggesting that the plant's not growing as well as it should be. Okay, well, you guys are really doing well. Looks like we're going to have to be chopping up some peppers this afternoon. Probably maybe make some salsa. What I'll usually do is chop them up and just put them in the freezer. I bought a couple of years ago some boxes that I think they hold two cups, maybe 4 cups, but they're square and they all stack and they fit right in my side-by-side freezer. So that takes up Okay, it looks like we've got some onions that need to be taken out, but I'm going to leave those till I'm ready. Oh, this basil right here has gone to seed, which is not good. It's not good because once the plant goes to seed, it oftentimes changes the chemical nature of the plant and everything becomes more bitter. This is a topic of debate amongst my friendly gardeners. There's some who claim they can bring a plant back from the dead by just trimming it back down, having it start over, but I'm always worried about a change in flavor. So what you'll notice that it'll grow, it'll top out, and then it'll start to look like it's going to go to seed. Basil, this really smells basil-y. My partner Kimmy loves basil, and she makes a lot of things with it. I liked everything she cooks with it, but it's not my favorite. Okay, these are parsnips. They all look good, but I'm gonna leave them in the ground. What's down there? Oh, an onion. We kind of interplanted this bed that I'm looking at right now. Now this is interesting. I'm looking at carrots. This is in a raised bed, but the tops have been decimated. That means that either a rabbit is hopping up on this, or I've had a deer come in here, or there's some other third party that I don't know. Mostly I deal with deer and rabbits are the problem. And I'm going to do okay, I just pulled a beet. You look good. Some of these are planted pretty tight. There is a philosophical argument that happens between gardeners as to how tight you should plant things. And you can actually get really good harvests by planting things fairly tight and then picking the young things and spacing them out as they grow. But the reality is sometimes you forget, and then everything's right on top of each other, so it inhibits the growth. It's one of those things that you just kind of get a feel for. It's really hard to plan for, and that's why you have to kind of embrace mediocrity, which is one of the topics I was thinking about talking about today. But we're going to go a different direction. I want to talk about permanence and longevity. Okay, so let me pull another one of you guys out of here. I just think they're kind of close together and need a little bit of breathing space. All right, so that's a turnip, and these three are beets. The greens we're going to feed to the rabbits, so we don't want anything to go to waste. But again, the clock is ticking on this. All right, so I'll put it in my harvest basket, and then if maybe for the picture for this guy, I will take a picture of my harvest basket so you can see what we got. All right, this is we've got intermodal planting here with a bunch of squash. These are winter squash. So they're going to stay here for a long time, and they'll actually keep for quite a while too. You can eat these squash probably into January if you keep them in a cool, dark place. Lots of tomato. We're going to be swimming in tomatoes in about 2 weeks. The celery is looking really good. This last winter was so mild. I had celery that overwintered. We left one plant in to get the seeds, and she is all seeded up. But not ready. Seed harvesting is a whole different ball game, and one that I am not very practiced in. There's a right time to harvest the seeds. If you get it too early, then the seeds aren't done, so you won't have good germination. And if you come in too late, the seeds have all fallen, and you won't get them. So, there's always another little practical thing that you can learn. Okay, I just left the winter garden. And we call it the winter garden because we grow in the winter, but also everything in the winter garden is in raised beds. It's all up off the ground. There's nothing growing directly into the ground. And now I'm in the summer garden where everything is opposite. It's in the ground, but most of the summer garden is in black plastic right now. It looks like we have a bunch of cherry tomatoes that are starting to come on. Oh, hello, butterfly. And my main task today actually has to deal with finishing a gate to this thing that's open right now, so the deer can get in here. Now, we had some things volunteer, and I've got this, I don't know what it is. It's going like crazy. It might be lufa, but it might be some kind of cucumber. I don't know. I think we ate one. Now, loofah, you, of course, can eat, and they're usually eaten young. And then when they get old, they become the hardened, spongy thing that you know and love. We've tried to plant it in the last couple of years, but sometimes always, there's some of what you plant that is more aspirational than actually functional, or you're not able to keep up with it. Now, what I'm doing right now is I've got this squash that's growing up over a trellis, and I'm retraining things so that they're climbing on the trellis and not onto each other. They'll send out these little tendrils that wrap around things, and they're really awesome, but they will wrap around other plants and everything else they can possibly find. So that's getting trained up a little bit. This guy is this one is probably 10 feet long. So what I'm standing in a hoop. I've got basically a 4-foot walkway, and then on either side I have an 18-inch grow box. So we're talking about 7 feet. And then I've got these are cattle panels or hog panels, depending on the size, but they are, what are these things? 16 feet. And so they're in the ground on the one side, and then they come over to the other side and provide a hoop that you walk under. I'm just under 6 feet, and these things are about 6 foot, 1 inches tall off the ground. So it provides a way to do like a tunnel, which aesthetically is pleasing. Oh man, this, whatever this is, it is going crazy in the best possible way. And we especially want to get the fruit up trellised so it has weight support. All right, so I'm climbing down in here and digging around to see what's growing. Interestingly, we kind of interplanted tomatoes and squash for some reason this year, and the tomatoes that are shaded underneath the squash are the ones that have turned red already. The other ones are still green. Now we want to keep the tomatoes rolling as long as possible, and I will here they can stay that way for quite some time. All right, here's some cucumbers. Now, cucumbers are something that novice gardeners, including myself, screw up all the time, because a cucumber will keep growing and it'll start to yellow. And once your cucumbers turn yellow, you're too late. They're edible, but their skins become tough and the seeds mature and they become like seeds in there instead of like a quiet little bump in your. All right, there's some cucumbers. I think they need to come around the other side. So they're just not as good to eat. Now this is where I need to understand what exactly this thing is. This guy's big. All right, we're going to take you, my son, and then we are going to open you up today and see what's going on. We had a lot of things that I think didn't germinate last year. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but this year we had a lot of volunteer squash come in. And so we have squash that we don't know exactly what it is. I can make my guesses based on what seeds I got last year and what I planted. Also this year, I kind of tried to clear out a lot of my seed. I find the third year is probably the limit. So after something's 3 years old, wow, we got cucumbers and cucumbers and cucumbers. Some of them a little bit too big. Now I like to pickle them. I like pickles. But we did pickles last year, and I think I have enough pickles downstairs, but I will quick pickle them, put them in a brine, like vinegar, let them soak for 8 or 12 hours or overnight, and then they come out really, really nice. Okay, this is a different variety of cucumbers. I can see here where I am, the deer have gotten in here and decimated the top of this plant. Some permaculturists, their philosophy is just plant extra rather than trying to battle the animals, and there's a lot of wisdom in that. And you can't ever plan on 100% harvest. Uh, so, so knowing that there's going to be some amount of waste or disease or whatever, a water line breaks and you don't notice for a week, and so everything gets really dry. All those things can happen. So you have to plant extra. Okay, so the topic I wanted to kind of talk about was the future, and I think to be a good permaculturist, the future needs to be paramount. And I'm not talking about like planning for your retirement. I'm talking specifically and necessarily about the future after you're dead. And I know talking about death is not always the most fun and engaging topic, but we have become, I think, as a people globally, and in particular in our American culture, we've become too selfish. We become too focused on ourselves because we can. In days past, there weren't all the banks and monetary systems and all that where you could squirrel away money that you would pass on to the next generation. In fact, it wasn't that long ago that people had strong boxes and guards because all their money had to be physical. That's why, when you see kind of cartoonish representations of pirate booty or whatever, it's always all the cups and stuff. There's a reason for that. Now look at this guy. I have this squash here that has about a 6-foot arm that it's sent out. Now it was going across the dirt, so I moved it over here onto the plastic just for a space concern, just to keep these plants as much as possible out of the way of each other. But now we can put money in banks, so we can keep it and pass it on and invest it and do all sorts of things. I've got some artichokes looking good here. This one looks like it's done, but I've never harvested artichokes before. Now, a lot of people plant artichokes around here and don't eat them. They turn into kind of a beautiful flower, but the artichokes are not my big thing. So we used to look at money, especially if you weren't of the upper, richer class, as it looks like something else down here. That looks like animal. One of the side things that I never could do before I moved here is you slowly become an expert in identifying animal scat. So anyway, for most people, most human beings, the only way to pass wealth on was in terms of like land and improvement to land and tools and utilities and stuff that can be used from generation to generation. And that's kind of where I'm at in terms of thinking about time scale. So if we want to function on a time scale greater than our own, you have to think about planting and growing things that you may not necessarily benefit from directly. Because if you don't think that way, you're not going to plant the trees that you need to plant. You're not going to do a long-term basis for whatever you're doing. So one of the principles we have here is I sometimes criticize permaculture for being more about aesthetic than it is about actual food production. But I think that aesthetic element, I don't want to poo-poo it too much because it's really important. If your gardens are just completely utilitarian and it's not a place that you want to live and breathe and be, well, then you're not going to spend as much time in them. And to a degree, that's sort of the principle, that you're living with your food and your gardens and your animals, that it's part of your lifestyle, as opposed to this abstraction that you go to the grocery store once a week to get what you want to get. Okay, so I went through, I just grabbed a couple more squash. We've got a full basket, so a full bushel of produce this morning that we are going to need to try to eat. So like our gardens here, to give you an example of kind of what I'm talking about, this long-term growth and short-term functionality, we did our gardens with 4-foot or 4-inch diameter round posts, or they're cylinder, right? Posts. And they're 8-foot posts, so they're sunk 2 feet in the ground. So the fences are 6 feet high. Then we use a 6-foot woven fence that has a tighter weave down to the bottom to try to keep animals out. I think it would work for things like possums and raccoons, except those two are both climbers. But it does not keep the rabbits out. I watch the rabbits go through this fence at a full tilt. Doesn't even stop them. So then we've taken the bottom of the fence. So the bottom 2 feet, there is chicken wire there, and that will keep out the rabbits and the other little things. So the fences are doubled up. But I don't really like the look. It's not terrible, but it's not nurturing, the look of wire fence. So everywhere where we planted wire fence, there's a plan to cover the wire fence. So this garden, I'm looking at the winter garden right now, and on the north corner here is what we call the tree gate, because there is a decorative metal tree on the gate. And we had a trellis that we built, and it is wisteria is growing up on it. Now, so the trellis sitting on some cement blocks is what it is. But this trellis, I'm looking at it, it's been here. Did we do this first year? It's been here 3 or 4 years from a kit. And it's probably got 15 years left in it before it's gone, before it falls apart. But the wisteria itself grows and goes around each other. So in about 3 or 4 years, the trellis itself won't matter anymore, because it was put here to support the wisteria. But by and by, the wisteria will be strong enough to give its own sense of support. And then it creates a green wall that's growing on the wire, such that you can't see into the garden, and animals can't see into the garden. But more importantly, it provides an aesthetic break. So as I'm walking down, we have the gate, and then there's this wisteria plant, and then there's a honeysuckle plant, which is the same thing. Now the wisteria is deciduous completely; it loses its leaves in the winter. The honeysuckle does not. So it's provided a good visual boundary. I've got another climber here. I don't even remember what it is, and it's struggled, but it's still alive. So we'll still try to keep it alive. And then I just recently planted another honeysuckle that's right here next to it. And then there's another section here where there'll be another honeysuckle, but I have to do some work on this side before it's ready to put in the ground. So that's where we're trying to make this fence disappear. This down here, there's another gate that's right next to the greenhouse, and it is covered in another climber. Same principle. It was a trellis. I remember this trellis here I bought on Craigslist, and it was the father, an older gentleman, and they had bought this trellis for his daughter's wedding, and then they canceled the engagement. So they had put it up and put it together, and then they'd taken it apart, so I put it together again. So now it started out representing a love that didn't happen, and now it's helping us beautify and keep this gate. So again, in the long run, these gates will go away and they'll be just taken over by that. So that's the principle of what I'm talking about. Is when we build these structures, we're not building them to be permanent. We're building them to be semi-permanent, to last 10 to 20 years until they're supplanted by what it will be. So I can see in my mind's eye the vision of these gardens in 30 years, that you'll walk into this room, basically, that is the garden, and it's surrounded by green. It has green walls around it that keeps the predators and keeps things out that shouldn't be and demarks the space. So aesthetically, as you're moving around the farm, rather than just be a big open field, it feels like you're going from intentional space to intentional space to intentional space. And I think that kind of sums up our aesthetic design. And that's where the real permaculture comes in. Each space has a feel, it has a presence, it has almost like a spirituality, we could say, a purpose, a drive, an intent, and those spaces are each very intentional. So I'm looking out this gate, and across there is where we have the fire pit. We were out here last night enjoying watching the stars, and I uh, I made a I made a an apple pie on the stove. We went and picked fresh apples while we were sitting there, and it was delicious. Not on the stove, on the open fire. And then across the way is Kimmy's garden, which is a specimen garden. It's not food. It's all flowers and pollinators and herbs and things like that. Then over here, I see where this winter I'll be putting in the blueberry patch. And you just go from intentional space to intentional space to intentional space in a way that's semi-permanent and really lives beyond. So this one of the last idea I'll leave you with, one thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about and trying to plan for is, I'm in my early 50s, so I reasonably have 20, 30 years. I could be fortunate and have 40, but the older I get, the less I'll be able to do here. Um, so I need to think about this place in terms of it having a life after me. And I need to think about the way I invest in it, what I build, and what I do in a way that this place can become what it is. I don't see myself as the owner. I mean, technically the bank owns it, right? I'm still paying a mortgage, but I see myself as a steward. And I think stewardship is the right model for what we're trying to do on the planet. And to reverse this global and this American culture of accumulation for your own good. I know, a lot of my friends on the left, when you ask kind of what they aspire to do, what their goals are, it almost always gives the same answer, and it's travel. And I've traveled, I enjoy traveling. And I'm not like on a diatribe against travel, but travel is another type of consumption. And ultimately, I believe spiritually, just having consumption only, without having some kind of production, without having some kind of art, some kind of beauty, something you're doing to create, it starts to leave one feeling hollow and vacuous. And I've read accounts on the Reddit or wherever around where people who took their 20s, they really devoted to their career, and they spent 30, 40s, and 50s, and they're marching up, they're accumulating wealth, they've got all these zeros in the bank account, and then they travel all the time, and after a while it starts to get vacuous. Okay, how many times can I go to Italy? How many times can I? And because to me, ultimately, it is still consumption. I like to consume, but consumption is not a spiritual basis. And that's why we go back to this. And for me, I'm a steward of this little tiny patch of the universe where I get to be, and I get to live, and I get to watch how the world works. But my hope and my intent is not only just to pass this place directly on to the next generation. My hope is to find others and inspire them, that we all start doing the same thing, that we all start figuring out how we can build the world to be a better place, and a better place moving forward, not just in the moment, but that the energy of the planet is about trying to make things better. The world I lived in, I inherited. The sewers were built, the roads were built, the schools were built, the healthcare system was built, and it's been hard and tragic to watch that sort of be in decline. Um, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And I can't stop the trillionaire and billionaire industrialists who are buying up and monopolizing the planet. I can steer myself away from them, not shop at their stores, not buy their products, not use their things that are manipulative. But the most radical thing I can do, what's the old saying? The most radical thing you can do is grow your own food. The most radical thing I can do is just bit by bit stop participating in the system. And that's what I want to do. All right, we've had a good harvest. I anticipate here in about 2 weeks, we're going to have to start processing tomatoes in earnest. Things look good in the gardens. Special thanks to Julie, who makes that happen. And you can contact me, John, at johnlarson.org. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll catch you on the next one.